And I met his one sister and brother-in-law, and we came home the first time in '87 to visit with the family before we went back to Maryland, and then before we moved down here. Down there. And we visited their house, and they preached to us, and we found out some different things. We found out that they were going to a church much like this, where people believed that God still healed. Other churches say they believe that, but if you pin them, they don't really believe that anymore. They'll tell you all the miracles have ceased. I don't believe that, because I've seen miracles, and I've seen miracles today, real miracles. And we talked to them, and I remember we left their house and we went out to the car, and we were sitting there, and I said, wow, they have really gone off the deep end. That's what I thought about these people. They have really gone off the deep end. Then we moved down in '88. No, I'm sorry, my years messed up. We moved down in '91. And we did visit their church one time. And they believed in the praise and worship like we do. Now, the preaching was good, but the praise and worship, that was beyond what we had ever seen. We both walked out there, looked at each other, and said, that's not for us. But, like I said, I had injured my back, and I had sciatic pain. Well, when I got to Tennessee, right after we got to Tennessee, probably within the first couple of weeks, I re-injured my back. And I was literally on a couch that had a board on it, for 2 weeks, flat on my back. And I went to doctors, and the doctors told me that they wouldn't do surgery on me until I had lost control of my bodily functions. Then they said they wouldn't give me anything for pain because I would become addicted to it. So here I was, they sent me home to get better or maybe not. But whatever it was, I was going to have to live with it. And when I went home, I decided, God could heal me. I didn't tell anybody that because I wasn't sure who all believed that yet. And I didn't want to sound like a wacko or anything, So I said, God could heal me. And I began to think, if God healed people, and He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, He could heal me. And then I realized He was the only one who could. I'd heard people who had back surgery and it never did them any good. They'd always end up being worse again. And I thought, I couldn't stand that. And yet they weren't even willing to do that for me. Well, John's sister's name is Brenda, so I'll tell you that so I can keep saying it. But Brenda came by the house one day, and she said, Debbie, she said, Elaine Homer is coming to our church, and she has a healing ministry. She prays for people, and we've seen them healed. Not because she healed them. God heals them. But you have to believe, and you certainly have to have somebody else who believes that you can be healed before they'll truly pray a prayer of faith. That's what that is. You have to have that kind of faith first. So she said, do you want to go? Well, God was on my only choice here. Yeah, I wanted to go, So we went to church that night, and when she finally called for people to come up, the first thing she called for was people who had back problems. I was really glad because I couldn't stand it much longer. We were sitting. We had little metal chairs back then, and she'd already been preaching, and I was already about to have a fit because I couldn't stand sitting anymore. And she called for people, and I went up front, and I watched these other people, and she would hold their hands above their heads, and she would pray. Their hands would be uneven. I hope mine look uneven right now, but their hands would be uneven. And she would pray for them, and you would see their hands come straight across even with each other while she prayed. It was the most amazing thing. And I thought, God, I want to know that I've had a touch from you. I want to know. I'd see these people falling out. Well, I'd seen it on television, but I had never really seen that in real life before. And I thought, oh, God, I want a touch from you. But if I fall out on the floor like that, I'm going to get hurt, and I'm going to be in worse condition than I am now. I didn't see how that was going to help. So I was really scared, at the same time. But I was trusting God. My 100% faith was in God at that time. I had no other choice. That's terrible when that's your only choice, but that's the way I was, And so when it was my turn and I went forward, when your hands are above your head, you can't see them, so I couldn't tell whether my hands were even or uneven or if they ever straightened out or whatever. But I just trusted. I just remember feeling such a trust that God was going to do something for me. I just knew it. Just like I knew my name, I knew it. I wasn't saved yet, by the way. And so she prayed for me, and the next thing I knew, the floor rose up and met my back. That was really what it felt like. That was my touch from God, because I was afraid to fall. And God overcame that fear by making me think the floor had come up to meet me. It was really special, you know? I thought that was really sweet. But I knew that I still had pain. I still had sciatic pain going down my leg. And but I just trusted that God had done something for my back. One time I asked the chiropractor, I said, how come when I first walk in the office, you can tell something's wrong with my back? He said, because your shoulders are uneven. And I went home and I looked at my shoulders, and they were uneven. They really were. The next morning, after I'd been prayed for, and I got out of the shower, first thing I did was stand and look in the mirror at my shoulders. They were straight across. My shoulders were straight across. And I was so thrilled. Like I said, even though I was in pain, I knew that I'd had a healing because something was different. I saw that miracle in my life. Well, time went on, but I was continually being drawn. At that time, because of what Brenda and her husband Gerald believed, I thought I was being drawn to them. I wanted to go and see them all the time and talk to them. They always talked of love. Well, maybe they didn't talk of it, but I saw love in them. I saw a true love in them. They loved me for who I was. It didn't matter what I'd been. It didn't matter what my past was to them. They just loved me for who I was. See, that's the way God sees us. He doesn't see us for what we are. I couldn't forgive myself because I thought I was somebody really horrible. I had done awful things, and I thought I was so horrible. I really didn't love myself, and I couldn't forgive myself. And so, but I saw this love in her, and this love was for who I was. She just loved me for who I was. I don't know who I was at that time. I was just married to her brother. But she loved me. She loved me because I was a human being. And so I would go there all the time. And I couldn't drive or anything because of my back. So I'd get John to drive me. He had to work during the day. So he'd come home and I'd say, hurry up, get your shower. Let's go over to Brenda and Gerald's. He said, you're going to wear out your welcome there, you know. And so I said, I can't help it. I just feel like I have to be with them. It was because they knew God, and I had to be with God, and that was the only way I knew how to be with God. Though I didn't realize any of that at the time, because really I didn't think I was trying to be close to God. I really wasn't into too much preaching at that time. But I wasn't into the love I was receiving. And we all are. That is the hole. You hear people say that there's a hole inside you that only God can fill? That's love. Only God can fill that unconditional love, and that's what I needed filled in my life. So I could tell you, I sought for that love in a lot of things. A lot of people do. You seek for love in drugs, alcohol, sex, fame, fortune. People seek love. That's what they're seeking. You ever hear people that are famous? You know what they say they like? They like that applaud. When they're standing on stage, they want to hear that applaud. See, they want love. They're seeking that love, and that's what we're all seeking. And the devil can imitate a lot of different things. He can imitate love with lust, but lust doesn't last. And it sure doesn't fill that hole. It's like putting a round peg in a square hole. You can do that, but there's little gaps. And that's the way love and lust are, you know. Lust will fit in there, but it doesn't fill the hole. There's still gaps. You still need God. So anyways, then we moved into our own place, and Brenda and Gerald got a new house, and we went to, John started working a new job, and he worked from 4 to midnight for Olin Mills. So when he would go to work, he had a ride to work. That saved us gas money. I would get in the car as soon as he left, and I would go up to Brenda and Gerald's house. And I would spend time up there, but I had to be back before midnight because I didn't want John to know I was spending all this time up there because he said I was wearing out my welcome. So I would go up there, and I'm going to skip all the way ahead. Well, I don't. I want to say this one thing. God was drawing me, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I would go up there, and I would come under conviction. I was under conviction, and I would begin to doubt my salvation, okay? Because before you'll go to the doctor, you have to admit you're sick. I had to realize I wasn't saved before I would go to the doctor. So I would go up there, and I would begin to doubt my salvation. By the time I left, I was under real conviction, and I would doubt it. And it was like it was a hat. And when I would get ready to leave there, I couldn't deal with what I was dealing with on my own. I could deal with it when I was with them because the love of God was there. But I couldn't deal with it on my own. So it was almost like, and I didn't even realize I said this at the time, but it was like I could take that hat off, and I could leave that at Brenda and Gerald's house, and I could go home. And I wouldn't think about it again until I came back there. But just like that hat would belong to me and you'd keep going back after it, I kept going back after it. So I kept going back up there, and I would deal with it again, and I would deal with it again. Finally, on June the 19th, I was up there, and we were just working out in the garden, Brenda and myself. And I used to go up there. She had 2 boys about Michael's age, and so that's my son. And they would play together. So that gave us time to be alone and to talk. And Brenda would talk to me about all kinds of different stuff, and she would talk to me about the witness. Well, I'd heard going out witnessing before, but I didn't know what the witness was. I never even heard that term before. It is in the Bible. And I want to read in 1 John 5, verse 9. It says, if we receive the witness of men, the witness of God is greater. For this is the witness of God, which he hath testified of his Son. He that believeth on the Son of God hath the witness in himself. I thought, I had never heard that all my life. I had no idea what the witness was. And I would say to her, what's the witness? What are you talking about, the witness? And that was like really Greek to me. When she would try to tell me, I didn't understand at all. See, my spiritual eyes weren't to that point of understanding yet. That is something you have to experience. That's in the testimony. The witness is in the testimony. You understand that after you're saved. But this thing keeps coming out of you. That's the witness that keeps coming out of you. And it's not you. It's the Holy Spirit coming out of you. And so I kept asking her, and I didn't understand. Well, that day, things kept happening. It's just like God. Things always keep happening, you know. So the boys would need her, and so she'd go off. And I was in the garden. I'd be left by myself. And the Holy Spirit would start dealing with me. And I just really couldn't bear it. He was telling me I wasn't saved. And I didn't want to think that, because if I wasn't saved, see, I would try to convince myself, oh, that's okay, well, at least I'm saved. At least I'm saved. At least I won't die and go to hell. That's what I thought, you know. So now when the Holy Spirit was telling me I wasn't saved, I kept thinking, but I can't not be saved, because if I'm not saved, I might die and go to hell, you know. And I didn't want to die and go to hell. That's all I knew. I just didn't want to die and go to hell. I'd heard plenty about it. Didn't want to be there, you know. And so then we finally went in the house, and then Gerald would need Brenda, or the kids would need Brenda. Somebody always needed it, and I kept getting left by myself, and it would just be me and God, me and God, me and God. And I was like, I was about ready to tear my hair out. I really was. I didn't know what else I was going to do. I really began to feel like I was going to bust. And finally, at one point we were sitting around the table, and Gerald was witnessing to this other guy, and Brenda and I were talking at the other end of the table. And he was preaching to this guy, but it was like the witness kept bouncing off of him, and it was hitting me. Things he was saying, I would turn around, interrupt my conversation, didn't excuse myself for nothing, just turn around and say, Gerald, do you mean to tell me thus and thus, you know, and I would interrupt whatever he said, you know. One time he said that if you can't forgive yourself, you can't allow God to forgive you. And I knew I had always beat myself up, and I never could forgive myself. And I turned around and I said, you mean to tell me that if I can't forgive myself, then God can't forgive me? He said, that's not what I said. I said that if you can't forgive yourself, you can't receive forgiveness. If you ever hurt somebody and you felt really bad about it, and you went back and you felt guilty about it, and you went and you said, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, man, I can't believe this happened, I really feel bad, and they truly forgave you, they would say, it's okay, I forgive you, it's okay, it was an accident, it couldn't be helped. But you still feel guilty about it. You haven't forgiven yourself, and you haven't received their forgiveness, because you keep going back to them, and you keep saying, I'm really sorry. And you really are sorry, but you can't receive forgiveness, so you can't be forgiven. And that's the way it is with God. If you can't receive, you have to be able to receive forgiveness. Receiving that's the part of faith. That's the part we have to do by faith, is receiving. And that's the part I didn't understand. Not yet, anyways.